Welcome to another edition of the Hang Time Podcast. Sekou Smith here in Atlanta. My main man, John Schumann in New Jersey. John Hartzell behind the glass, as always, making it work. NBA, as is wont to do this time of year, provides a steady dose of headlines, highlights, and everything else. 10-game slate on Wednesday night, which was fantastic as always. Donovan Mitchell sent me out of the building, out of the studio. Dennis Scott and I, Shu, just raving about how explosive he looked on that dunk over Luka Doncic. Welcome to the NBA, rookie. We're going to have Candace Buckner of the Washington Post join us a little later on. We're going to do an autopsy on the abysmal 2-8 start to the season for the Washington Wizards. But before we get to that, Shu, Wednesday night, the Wolves and Lakers teed it up at Staples Center. Lakers holding on for a 114-110 win. The Lakers had four guys score 20 or more points, led by LeBron James. It is 24, Kyle Kuzma 21, Josh Hart with 21, and Brandon Ingram with 20. Have they stumbled on to something with that quartet of scorers and a new defensive-minded center in Tyson Chandler?
Time will tell. I mean, they were playing the Wolves, and the Wolves have their own problems right now. But I thought it was interesting that they played all 48 minutes with either JaVale McGee or Tyson Chandler on the floor.
Yeah, it's clear that LeBron and Luke Walton are on the same wavelength when it comes to needing another big man to be out there to prevent LeBron or Kuzma from having to play the five.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I was just surprised that they abandoned it. They abandoned the small ball look altogether. They didn't even play it for a couple of minutes here or there in the second or third quarters or anything like that. It was gone completely. We'll see if that continues going forward. But then obviously Chandler made an immediate impact by getting them a couple of big offensive rebounds, basically three by fighting with the Wolves. He got basically three extra chances down the stretch after Derrick Rose hit 2 threes to make it a 1-point game in the final minute. 2 tap outs and one where the Wolves, he was basically battling with the Wolves and then they couldn't handle the rebound and went out of bounds. And so that's, an immediate impact. And so they got to feel good about that. But escaping with a 4-point win over the sort of dysfunctional Wolves isn't spectacular. The one thing with the sort of lack of shooting, the one thing I noticed is after Rose hit those 2 threes, their initial possession, they called a timeout, and so they ran a possession with LeBron at the elbow. And LeBron at the elbow can be really dangerous, but they had Rondo, Chandler, Ingram, and Kuzma on the floor. Kuzma is the only real shooter around LeBron in that situation. And so having only one shooter and there wasn't really any movement around him sort of takes away from how dangerous, LeBron at the elbow can be. And, they ended up settling for like a tough LeBron off the dribble long 3. And so I still think there's offensive issues with this team, which as far as lack of shooting and around LeBron that, we've talked about since the summer. So, I take any grand conclusions with it. I just thought the 48 minutes with the real center was interesting. And then sort of that last possession where they couldn't sort of generate a real good look when they needed one. Was interesting too.
Yeah, it's weird. As much as we've talked about Jimmy Butler all year, Derrick Rose has become the guy to watch on the Timberwolves.
What's hilarious is that this is a team that's ranked at the bottom of the league in 3-point attempts for the last few years, and now it's Derrick Rose that's leading them into the 3-point revolution.
I know. It's remarkable to see Rose. The 50-point game, was a blip on the radar. You think, oh, well, it's just one of those nights. But he really has rejuvenated himself, and kind of gotten his career back on track, playing for Tibbs again, but this time in Minnesota. It's been impressive, been interesting to watch.
7 for 9 from 3-point range, which was
mind-boggling, yeah. He's never been considered a good 3-point shooter. So to see him do it, let you know what kind of work he's put into his game, obviously. Past few years. Big Thursday night on TNT. Rockets and Thunder at 8 o'clock Eastern, followed up by the Bucks and the Warriors at 10:30. I don't know. I mean, I love to see what the Rockets and Thunder have in store if Russell Westbrook can come back from that ankle injury and get on the floor. But I'm going to have to take a nap this afternoon just to make sure I'm fully energized to stay up late and watch Bucks Warriors. We're only going to get to see that twice, during the regular season, see these matchup between a Bucks team that is playing a more Warriors-like style in terms of how they're attacking offensively. I'm looking forward to seeing what Giannis is going to do with in a one-on-one matchup with KD as much as I'm looking forward to seeing the Bucks try and beat the Warriors at their own game tonight.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see the other end of the floor a little bit. I did a video today about the Bucks' improved defense, and I've mentioned this before that they're actually more improved defensively than they are offensively, and the big thing is they've gone from last in the league in preventing points in the restricted area to first in the league in preventing points in the restricted area, and with their big sagging on pick and rolls, Brook Lopez sort of hanging near the basket instead of what we saw last year from Henson and Thon Maker and the like, just venturing too far away from the basket and not protecting the rim. So, but the Warriors are like the ultimate challenge to that defensive scheme, in that if you hang out near the basket, well, then Steph Curry can just pull up from three if the guy guarding him gets sort of caught in the screen. And we saw them get punished by the Blazers the other night. Portland shot 16 for 21 from mid-range. So that scheme gives up mid-range shots, and Portland shot, no other team is going to shoot 16 for 21 from mid-range maybe all season, but
right.
That's sort of what you're susceptible to, is a team that can shoot well off the dribble, and obviously the Warriors have the best shooter off the dribble in the league. And so I'll be curious to see if Milwaukee has to sort of scrap or adjust their defensive scheme to the Warriors, or if they just try to stay that way and hope their guards can do as good a job as possible of getting through screens and forcing Steph inside the arc instead of being able to pull up for comfortable threes. So we'll see. I'm sort of curious to see that end of the floor, I think. And then I'll be curious to see who's guarding Giannis. I mean, he's basically the four in the Bucks lineup. So does that mean Draymond Green is guarding him early on? And then how much does Golden State play small ball, since Lopez is a sort of a perimeter center? That should be fun to watch.
I don't know if I like that matchup for Draymond, to be honest with you. And I know he's a great defender, one of the best in the league, but I think you run the risk of getting Draymond in some serious foul trouble if he's trying to guard Giannis out on the perimeter as Giannis attacks, and goes towards the basket. It'll be interesting to see what Steve Kerr does in terms of matchups. I'm sure they've got an idea of how they want to play it and how they want to go about doing it. If I'm not mistaken, the game I remember last season when KD and Giannis were kind of matched up a few times, that was interesting to see two guys with that length kind of going back and forth at each other. KD can attack you from beyond the three-point line with a shot, as opposed to Giannis really attacking you from that distance and then having to drive and try and find the spots he likes to get to in the lane. But this is a different, Mike Budenholzer is going to give you a whole different approach, I would imagine, than what the Bucks did last year in the matchup against a team like this. So there are other games on Thursday night, but that TNT doubleheader, Rockets Thunder at 8 Eastern and Bucks Warriors at 10:30 Eastern is that's must-see TV.
Rockets Thunder should be good too, because there's those two teams that seem to be both sort of regaining their footing.
Yes.
And so I think it's important game for both teams.
Definitely. It's and Shu, I'll be honest, 3D and Matt Weiner and then Jared Greenberg and myself last night on NBA TV on Game Time Live and Crunch Time, we were talking about just where teams are now and what a 10 games deep into a season, what you can tell about teams, what kind of information and data can be gleaned from a performance 10 games into an 82-game season. It's starting to shape up now. The teams that started hot have kind of, and couldn't sustain it, have shown themselves. The teams that struggled a little bit, the Thunder without Russ, whatever, have kind of rebounded. And that brings me to what I think is the most curious team maybe in the entire league right now, in the Washington Wizards. We've been kind of hinting at it and talking about them periodically, but I think it's time for maybe something a little deeper, a deeper dive into what's going on with the Wizards. No better place to do that or person to do it with than Candace Buckner of the Washington Post. And we've been reading, all of her coverage this season, and I think we're all on the same wavelength, Candace, in identifying just how dysfunctional a team the Wizards are this short into the season. I mean, did you see this kind of struggle coming based on training camp or whatever went on in the offseason?
No.
Or was this just a shocker to you too?
It's a surprise. It just, my biggest thing that I've just been asking everyone who will listen, and I get no really good response back from them, people affiliated with the team. But how can a team that's been together for this long, and their superpower is their continuity, is how long the core has been together. So if you go all in on this strength that we have a core that's been together, if you think about it, Otto Porter's in his 6th year. And so let's say he materialized really maybe in year 2. So let's just be kind of conservative and say for 4 years, this core has been together, including Markieff Morris too. But how can they be this old, this much of a veteran team and be this disjointed? And I don't understand how you have defensive problems when, for the last 3 years, or 2+ years, we're counting Scott Brooks' first year there. They have defensive problems, and you think they would have fixed that, figured it out last year, fixed that, figured it out. But to regress, not just continue some of the same problems, but to go like Michael Jackson moonwalk back to some stuff that I haven't seen from this team in the years that I've been covering it. So, I mean, yeah, it's the question is just, I don't understand how a team that's supposed to be this good, this talented too, can be, this dysfunctional, as you say.
I feel like, and I've covered bad teams. I've covered good teams in this league. I've covered strange, peculiar teams. I always wish I'd have paid more attention in psychology class in college when I deal with a team that's strange like this. Is it something that the players and coaches feel like is fixable? Or do they walk around knowing that, all right, these are issues, we can fix this? Or is it a mystery to them as well?
They're always optimistic. And, Scott Brooks has always said, since day one, they're correctable and mistakes like that of that nature. But I'm with you. And I've covered that 2013, 2014 Indiana Pacers team when they got out the gate, were number 1 in the league. And then all of a sudden after the All-Star break, boom, and almost lose in the first round. And then you come to find out later that, there's some stuff happening. Actually, you don't really come to find out later. I still don't know, what happened in that locker room, to be honest with you. But there's got to be, and I understand, I totally understand you don't have to be BFFs to be coworkers and to be professionals. But there's got to be something within the chemistry of the locker room. And it's funny, like yesterday, I saw them at practice in Dallas in their tiny practice facility, and guys are loose and guys are light. And Kelly Oubre and Austin Rivers are play boxing each other with like some oversized pads that Kelly had. And so you see, little interactions like that, and you're like, okay, there's definitely some harmony, and there's definitely I like this guy and I don't hate this guy sort of energy happening. But when you see them on the court and you see body language and there's little tiny things like, I'm rambling on, but there was a little tiny thing in the last game in Dallas. Otto Porter came back into the starting lineup, and he got really aggressive. He was shooting the ball really well, and twice he took the defensive rebound and went down the court and put up a shot. They're trying to do that more with him. Sometimes that's not his strong suit. And after the second time that he missed, I looked at John Wall, and he kind of spreads his arms and he says something. And I'm not a mouth reader, but I heard the word shoot, like shooting or something like that. So, and you just look at body language. You don't even have to know what they're saying. You look at body language. He was not pleased with that shot. So it's little things like that you notice, but then you kind of take them away from the pressure and the and this cloud that's hanging on them of being 2-8, and they seem okay, but there's definitely something to it if guys are just annoyed with each other on the court.
Yeah. Well, here's a question, Candace. Is there anybody that's sort of taking personal responsibility, or is it just finger pointing all over the locker room? Like, is it a bunch of Spider-Men, pointing each other pointing fingers at each other, or is there somebody is like, you know what, I'm not playing well, or I need to do this, or I need to do this better, or, I mean, other than Scott Brooks, I imagine Scott Brooks is relative to everybody else falling on his sword regarding this. But is there anybody else that's just sort of saying, hey, I need to lead us out of this situation rather than the guys aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing?
But this is John, right?
Talk. Yeah.
Hey, John, what's up?
Hi, Candace.
Okay, sorry about that. All right. Yes. It's funny that after that Sacramento game, that was early in that road trip, their longest road trip of the season, I would say now a couple weeks, about 2 weeks ago. That infamous post-game locker room comments that came from Bradley Beal and John Wall. and they made it clear that, guys have their own agendas. Like, that was game 5 of the season. It's crazy. But since then, Bradley Beal has talked about what he needs to do better, and that he's blaming himself. I'm sure John has done that. I haven't been in every scrum post-game with John. So I'm sure he has done that. He has done that in the past, but I know for sure that Bradley Beal has said that. But to me, when a guy in a team sport says, it's on me, put the blame on me, it's my fault, like, that's great that's great to say in the media. And I totally believe that Bradley Beal wants to be a leader, but how true is that really? And it's not his fault. He's actually been pretty consistent on both ends of the court, largely, but it's definitely something wrong within the team. So, there have been times, sure, you can look at defense, an individual man-to-man defense. You can look at John's individual man-to-man defense. You can look at Kelly Oubre's. You can look at Jeff Green's. You can look at Brad. But to put it on one guy, I'm not buying that. It's there's something that needs to be fixed within the rotation.
Candace, I was taken aback by a lot of people suggesting to me last week that Dwight Howard was the answer. Like, well, what if Dwight comes out and, plays great and gives them a boost and changes the tone around this team? And I was like, I know that sounds good in theory, but I've watched Dwight's last few stops around the league, and I understand that might not be the role he plays on a team ever again in his career. And then his first 7 minutes on the court this season were just crazy. He was playing so great.
Yeah.
And they looked unbelievable. And then the power went out again. Is there a human solution on that roster? Is there some tweak they could do, some rotation they could change, anything that, from your perspective, that could change internally, or is this something that has to be fixed with outside forces?
Well, I think for one thing, playing the all bench unit all together. You mentioned the first 7 minutes, and I think for the first time that season, for the first time of the season, Brooks went stuck with the starters, I believe, for the first 9 minutes, and they did look very good. And then he started sprinkling in the reserves, and then by the end of that first quarter, all the reserves were in. And then by the second quarter, the game was done because the reserves could not score and they couldn't defend. So for 2+ years, Scott Brooks has been going largely with with two teams, with the starters and the all bench lineup playing in spurts. But then, when the all bench lineup doesn't really compete, he has to start bringing in John Wall at 10 minutes or Bradley Beal at the 10-minute mark. And there have been some times when he has kept a starter on the floor to kind of stabilize and make sure that there's a scorer or there's a scorer on the floor with that all bench lineup. But right now, it just looks like a bunch of mismatched parts. Austin Rivers hasn't found his offense yet, and he can bring great energy on the defensive end. But as good as Thomas Satoransky was as a backup in for John Wall last year during his injury year, during his timeout when he was with the injuries, we haven't seen that from Thomas Satoransky this year because Thomas Satoransky is not getting played. And because he's not getting played, because he's playing with this all bench lineup. And when they fail, he has to come off the court. So why don't you pair him with the Bradley Beal or pair him with the John Wall or somebody or Otto and just mix up the lineups a little bit, stagger a little bit. I think that's one of Scott Brooks' greatest needs that he can fix. He can fix things if he staggers the starters a little bit more. And that hasn't been the case consistently throughout his time as a head coach, even if you go back to OKC.
I got a stat for you. With Austin Rivers on the court and Beal and Wall both off the court, the Wizards have been outscored by 59 points in 92 minutes.
Okay.
That's like brutal. So your point about the all bench lineup and not staggering the minutes of Ball and Beal. I mean, maybe I don't know if he's mentioned that or if that's something. I mean, I haven't watched every game and paid attention to their rotations too closely, but if that's something they need to do, or just, do the whole, what Portland used to do with Lillard and McCollum, what Toronto used to do with Lowry and DeRozan, where one finishes the first quarter, the other one starts the second quarter, and there's one or both are on the court at the whole time. The Rockets do it with Harden and Chris Paul.
It just makes sense.
But yeah, that's for a minus 59 in 92 minutes with Rivers on the floor without either Beal or Wall. That's brutal.
Yeah. That's staggering. Candace, you wrote a fascinating article about kind of what ails this team and really, detailing it. And Scott Brooks, his job is safe, apparently, despite the struggles to start this season. What's the climate for this team in the D.C. area? Like, do the fans, have they given up on this group?
They gave up
already,
on this group.
Or do they?
They've been giving up. They gave up on this group sometime in the early, since NSYNC was together. This is a fan base. It's funny because when I came in, obviously I'm an interloper, and I didn't pay attention to the Washington Wizards because I'm basically based in the Midwest. But when I came in, I just remember that series that they gave the Pacers in the 14 playoffs. I was like, you know what? This is a young group. That was a pretty tough 6 games. Why is everybody down on the Wizards when I come into this market? And then you realize that, they haven't won 49 games since the 70. Yeah. I'm sorry, they haven't won 50 games since the 78 season. And that's sometimes you just stumble into 50 games. That's hard to do. To have a whole generation of fans raised on mediocre basketball. So, to answer your question in the current, they're down from what I've picked up on social media. You guys, fans are down on this team. They're of course not that they're not giving that Dwight Howard inclusion its due. Right. And to be honest with you, I'm not going. And I had this discussion with somebody on Twitter the other day. Like, I wrote a piece about one of the things, and it's been prevalent since he's been talking to the media, and he's every chance he gets a chance to talk to the media, he's always spouting these self-help books of like optimism and sunshine and stuff. So that's part of the storyline right now. And someone said, "Oh, that's a puff piece. Everywhere he's gone, he's been a cancer." I'm like, that's okay. Yeah, that's his past. But as of right now, he is going out of his way to try to be vocal in sharing that, hey guys, we can get out of this. We can still go to Eastern Conference Finals. So that's part of his thing now, and I'm going to write about it. But the fans don't care. They are not the unicorns and lollipops type of crew, and they've been down on this squad for a while.
My last question, Candace, is when you talk to these guys, Scott Brooks maybe in particular, like, what is the first thing that has to change? Like, where does improvement start with? Is it something on the defensive end of the floor, like
I think
better communication, or just guys staying in front of guys that they're guarding? Like, where does the improvement start from?
Yeah, they have been switching more, and that was obviously a change or apparently a change from last year. And so when that happens, find a guy to match up. They kind of simplify things and just say, we got to look ourselves in the mirror and we got to play our man strong. Like, that's okay. That's great. But how about match up and just communicate when in transition? Because there were some times with Wesley Matthews that I just don't understand how this guy is open all the time and he's killing you guys from the arc. Why won't somebody just kind of stick on Wesley Matthews? Who's and all their open 3-point shooters. I would say that's probably the biggest thing they can correct. It also, the other simple thing that they can correct is, start making some threes. They have this green light to shoot as many threes as possible, and some of them are good. But now that I'm looking at them, they're great when they get those spot up clean looks. Bill can stop on a dime. And as you say, John, you told me the other day, and you're right, he's good. He's great at stopping on a dime and transition and pulling up. Maybe Otto can do that, but everybody else on that team, they need to spot up and get a clean look. And that's not happening with this team. They're not shooting. They're not making threes, and it's been hurting them.
Yeah, Wall should be near the top of the league in assists on threes, and he has been in the past. And when they had Trevor Ariza, he led the league in corner threes that last year he was with Washington. And I guess I haven't watched close enough to see why they're not getting, clean 3-point looks out of, pick and roll with Wall as much as they should be. But, obviously that could help the offense.
I concur.
Candace, I'll tell you what else. that I think about when I look at this Wizards team and I start wondering how prepared are they to go all the way through this season with this group? Are they married to the idea that this has to be the group that they dig out of this hole with? Or could Ernie Grunfeld decide at some point, you know what? This isn't working. And in order to course correct the way we have to, we got to trade somebody. We have to trade one of our major pieces to fix this. And I know they've been really stubborn, it seems like, in believing in their core and believing that they have the right group of guys together. But if the fans see it, all of us who watch this team from afar see it, you and the other people who are around them on a daily basis understand that there's something off. How long does it take for Ernie Grunfeld and his staff to recognize it and do something about it?
Yeah, I don't see a major move happening in season. You asked earlier, if things are fixable within or they need a trade. They have 6 rotation guys in the last year of the deal, so I can see a move there. The biggest move that would shock me would be if they deal Markieff Morris for somebody, and that's the guy who's part of the core. But as far as Otto Porter Jr., Bradley Beal, or John Wall, I do not see it. And I know that's kind of a popular narrative, but I just do not see it. It would be the most un-Wizards thing in the history of Wizards things. They just don't do that. And John is essentially untradeable. They really are all in on this core. Now, if they don't make the playoffs or if they lose in the first round, then I can see a chip being moved, but I don't see it being John Wall at all. So you look at who have value, who would be the easiest person to move. And I'm trying to think like them, and I would say that will be probably Beato. But I don't see that happening in season. I would give in my credentials and pick a new line of work if that happens, because I just don't see that happening. My mind would be blown, and I would just have to go into like tailoring or something for a new career, because I would not know this team if they did that.
Right. It's just I just don't understand the shoe. And Candace, like when everybody else, like it's like we're all standing in this room and we see a big hole in the floor, and it's like, well, somebody put a rug over, put a sign, do something, and nobody. It seems like the Wizards as an organization.
You could jump over the hole. You could go around the hole. Exactly. It's not that big of a hole. Come on, guys. That's probably what they're saying. Yeah, it's true.
Just staggering.
Yeah, and it's just that they just don't make, besides, the Gilbert Arenas thing. And I think they had to do something to break up that team, because that was an unprecedented incident that happened. And so I like a remodel, a remake, I don't see it. I just don't see it happening. This team likes to stand pat.
They say Washington's a broken town right now. Maybe it extends to the basketball team. I don't know. Just frustrating. Shu, do you have a stat for us this week? I'm hoping you got something non-Wizards related, because I feel like I'm moving so down on the Wizards. I don't want to keep this nasty streak going. I want to feel good about something.
It is a non-Wizards related question. Candace, are you ready for a little statistical trivia?
I cannot wait, John.
Okay. There are 4 guys this year who have crossed the 10,000 point mark for their career. So they scored their 10,000th point this season already. For some context, 10,000 points is about 13 points per game over 10 seasons, or 22 points per game over 6 seasons.
Okay.
So 4 guys. I'm going to give you the team that they play for. You see how quickly you can name them. One of them, Charlotte Hornets.
Kemba
Walker, correct. Second one, Miami Heat. Sekou, any guess?
On the Heat, 10,000 point score. Going Dragic.
Dragic, correct.
Good one.
Third one, Phoenix Suns.
Seriously, come on now.
Phoenix Suns have a 10,000 point score on their roster.
Currently?
Yeah, everybody combined, maybe.
Who's that?
You say currently, right?
He's on the Suns right now. He scored his 10,000th point this season.
Is it Is it Jay? What's his name?
No, it's a player we've mentioned. I mentioned actually about 5 minutes ago.
On the Phoenix Suns.
Trevor Ariza.
Yep, Trevor Ariza, correct.
Wow. Okay.
And then the fourth one plays for Oklahoma City.
Raymond Felton.
Nope. Raymond Felton does have 10,000 career points, though. By the way, he was on the list already before this season. This guy just crossed.
Paul George.
Paul George, correct.
Wow. For some reason,
not bad. We didn't do bad.
I thought he would have.
So that makes
that before. That's interesting.
So those four guys make 44 active players in the league who have 10,000 points.
I guess Paul would have been short though, Candace, after being injured and missing the time he did. I bet.
Yeah. Good point.
That could have done it.
True. So there's 44 active players that have 10,000 points. The Warriors have 5 of them.
Of course.
Durant, Curry, Iguodala, Cousins, and Klay Thompson. So next is Houston and San Antonio each have 4, and there are 7 teams that do not have a single player on their roster who has scored 10,000 career points.
Good grief.
The good ones on that list are Philadelphia, does not have one. New Orleans does not have one. Anthony Davis is a couple hundred points away. And Utah is the other one that does not have a player on its roster that has scored 10,000.
Interesting.
It's a great set.
Candace, we get this every week on the Hang Time podcast. Usually it's very difficult to answer the questions. We've had some great guests, including yourself, who've helped turn the tide, because when he was just asking me, it was like math class in high school. Do you know the answer to number 4? Give me a minute. So
MSG actually had, I'll give a credit to Madison Square Garden Network, the Knicks broadcaster, actually had a great Wizards-related trivia when the Knicks and Wizards were playing the other day. And I'm just going to call it up. So here it is. Dwight Howard is one of 5 NBA players to lead the NBA in rebounds per game for at least 5 seasons. And the question was, who are the other 4? And I'm not even going to ask you to answer, but it was Wilt Chamberlain, Dennis Rodman, Moses Malone, and Bill Russell. So those are Dwight Howard and those 4 guys are the 5 guys who have led the league in rebounds per game in 5 seasons or more.
Well, Wizards could use a whole lot of that mojo if they. Candace, I'm feeling for you too, because I've covered wacky teams before, and you start questioning all the things you know about the game, and like, you know what I'm saying, like you start getting confused.
Me?
Like,
what am I
me? So we are saying some basketball prayers for you that this thing works out in some form of fashion, and we'll be reading and checking you out on WashingtonPost.com and everything you do. We appreciate it as always when you take a few minutes to join us here on the podcast, Candace.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. It's been a pleasure.
One more thing. Since Sekou and I are no longer going to be going to Cleveland for the finals, we need you to represent us at the Fotang Cafe next time you're in Cleveland.
That was really delicious. I'm glad you hit me to that.
You're part of the club now.
Exactly. We got stock in the Fotang Cafe. We are stockholders.
All right,
thank you, Candace.
Thanks, all right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Shu, it's always entertaining, Shu, to get somebody else's perspective on the things we talk about all the time. And I'm serious when I say it. When you are locked in with a team that you can't make sense of, it is one of the more difficult things to do in our business. You're trying to make sense of it to readers and fans when you can barely make sense of it yourself. And that Wizards team, I'm telling you, they are the most perplexing group of quality players. I mean, just as individuals, you look at them and you go, Otto Porter is a plus player. John Wall and Bradley Beal are all-stars. Dwight is a future Hall of Famer. Austin Rivers has changed my opinions of him over the course of his career. I no longer consider him a minus player. He's a plus NBA player at his best. Scott Brooks is one of my favorite guys as a coach. Not necessarily the X's and O's or whatever, but just in terms of temperament and understanding how to manage a complex locker room. This should work.
And every couple of weeks, Jeff Green's looking to look like the best player in the world.
Yeah, I'm saying this should work. The Wizards should work, and they don't. It doesn't make sense.
And it has worked at times, you know, and they've had some really good playoff performances. But at the same time, they've always talked more game than they have. And their inability, like we talked about at the beginning, their inability to take care of business against bad teams has been an issue.
Yeah.
They could get up for one game and then, the next day, lose to one of the worst teams, get up for a game against a good team.
Right.
And then the next
drilled
day,
by somebody.
Drilled by,
This is just strange. We'll keep an eye on them, obviously, all season like we do the entire league. And we'll be back Monday with another episode of the Hang Time Podcast, week 2 of the MVP ladder. Key race to the MVP ladder on NBA.com drops on Friday. Don't forget that huge TNT night tonight with the doubleheader. Get a chance to see the Bucks and the Warriors go at it in the nightcap. Be sure to subscribe on Hang Time and Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts for a new episode every Monday and Thursday all season long. Don't forget to leave reviews. We need the feedback, and we will see you right here next time on the Hang Time Podcast. Time Podcast.